Howdy.
Howdy.
You guys excited to be here? Yes. All right. Let's see it on your faces. There you go. Well, welcome to Goldstone. My name is Bob Haroldsson. I was the manager of the depot level maintenance and life extension for the 70 meter. We've got a film after this little presentation of world's toughest fixes, and you'll be able to see how we went through it. I just wanted to capture a few things on that might not be explained on the film. So why don't we go to the next slide? Oh, there I am right there. This is my baby. This is what we worked on, and the neat thing about it was it took us almost a year and a half to plan this job, and we had wonderful help from JPL, the people that built all the equipment. It was great. And someone asked, what kept you awake all night? Nothing kept me awake all night. During this planning phase, I slept like a baby. I woke up crying every 2 hours. It was wonderful. Good thing was, as soon as it started, then all that ironed out, because there's nothing you can do about it. It's just going. What we did work on is the major tasks was the elevation bearings, and you saw an elevation bearing out there when you did the tour around the museum. We did the hydrostatic bearing, which was what we called the runner, and you did see a piece of that. That was still out there. That's that one large flat segment. And we did work on our cables because they were giving us some issues. So, next slide. So, elevation bearings. These were pretty easy. I mean, you saw how small they were. And so we did have to use some small jacks, the kind that we haul up there with a crane and slide them under there. And we had to sit this under a saddle. And one thing I don't have showing here, but the way this thing operates is you have a yoke right here, which is the upper rotating structure. Then you have this portion here, which just holds that yoke. Oh, is there a laser there? Ooh, technology. Wow. Technology's evil. Oh, this is the wrong place for that, right? So what we have,
the red button.
There you go.
Ah, Star Wars. And so what you have to do is you have to actually lift this yoke because that has all the upper structure on it, so you can actually pop that off. And so that's what this is for. We put these large jacks in there, 200 tonners I believe they were, and you put this yoke portion here, which lies under the main yoke, and you just jack that up, just like that. That's my story. And then this is what you get. This is sort of somewhat unloaded, and this is what you have. And we have to pull this thing all apart, pop it off, you prep it, and you remove the old one. This is it, sort of like being hauled off. You have to actually pop that out. They explained it fairly well in the video, so I'm not going to go into super depth of it. We also we pull up the new one. And you can see how we got this on a chain here. This goes on a monorail, and he shows in the video, we actually had to transfer the weight from the monorail in this assembly here to the crane, because we're not going to set it down on the platform around there, because most of us didn't want to end up on the deck, down on the bottom. He'll explain that to you, and you'll understand it a little bit better at that point. And then we go put it all back together again. It looks like this again. And guess what? We get to do that 3 more times. It was fun. Really. And what was really fun was that since I was the manager of this job, I had to be here for most of it. And that means I got here real early and left real late. Next slide. The runner replacement. Now this is the one that's the big one that's always been advertised. And one thing they didn't show very well on the video, and don't get me wrong, the video is awesome. It is really awesome. What they didn't show is us cutting away the stairs so that we could actually start pulling off parts. This stair actually mounts right here. So we had to slide it off, cut it off, right there's the cut points, and then we had to take the stair that went this way, turn it around so it goes this way, so now we can access the antenna. Then after that was all done, we then had to start working on putting on, cutting the walls away and removing internal components around our runner, which is right in this area right here. One thing they didn't show on the video was how we had to remove these pads. This, you saw the runner that was up there, that one segment. There's 11 of those, and it's a big donut. And on that donut rides 3 of these devices, what we call pads. And so the whole upper structure, the rotating structure, floats on these pads. And so for us to jack it up, to remove this runner stuff, we had to remove those pads. Now that was another exciting job. I didn't have to deal with that. I was downstairs. We let the guys that knew what was going on do that. And you can see here where they're tied off. And that was one thing I want to say is that in the DSN, we stress safety all the way. When we are working with heavy stuff like this, we want to make sure our guys go home at the end of the day. So we always set up the plan, how we're going to do it, what the safety equipment is, move on out. Okay, so we've removed these pads now. Now we can get to the real business of trying to jack this antenna up. So needless to say, to jack this antenna up, we have to put it on legs that have to take the place of these so we can get to this. So these are what we call the columns. And we install the columns under each area that had a pad. Again, the video does a pretty good job of it. After we've put this up, after we've put these in place, next slide, we then, see, I missed this, I can't believe it. I missed a picture. Anyway, what I didn't show was that those big jacks I showed you on the first slide, well, we had a whole bunch of them that we put in this area to jack this antenna up. You know, I went over there, excuse me, I said, you know, I can help you out with that jacking up of that antenna. And they said, okay, what's going on, Bob? Well, here, let me go out to my car, I'll go get my hydraulic jack. And they laughed at me. They did. What do you mean? Well, yeah, we just go up there and we just go. He comes up, we pull it out, we're done, right? No, Bob. You know, it's those Dilberts as they talk to their pointy-haired boss. Pointy-haired boss. Okay, so then we put it. So now we've got it jacked up. Here we put the. We've got the scaffolding up so that we can actually work around it. And now we're starting to remove the runner. This was a pretty neat little task, and I thought I captured it. But you'll see in the video that we used a thing called a air caster. And it is one of the most coolest things. And the way that I found out about it was, when we were working on trying to figure out how we were going to pull these out, the guy comes up to me and says, hey Bob, take a look at this YouTube video. Okay. So I go look at this YouTube video. How many people know what a F-150 truck is? Oh, look at that. Everyone knows about that. Well, there's this F-150. On each pad, under each tire is this air caster. That's mine. And they energized it, and it just lifted the truck up. And the guy was showing it with his 2 daughters. One had to be 6 and one was 8. And they would just push that thing, and it would just slide right across the ground. And then the girl on the other side would just push it and stop it. We said, what a neat idea. So, when we removed these runners, we had to pull the first one off, of course. We popped that up. The next one we would loosen it up. We lift it up with jacks, slide the air casters, slide that right over to that same position, hook the crane up, pull it out. Awesome. It was great. Saved a lot of time doing that. Unfortunately, which I use later. And then we, of course, started the demolition, jackhammers, and all that kind of stuff. This is real high-tech stuff. I didn't understand it. And then we go over here and we installed and started the new installation of the sole plate, and we did the same thing. Air casters, slid them right in, jacked them up. Oh, it was so great. So it's always good once in a while to listen to people that float around on YouTube. Next slide. Then we poured the grout. This was fun. How many people here know where Jimmy Hoffa is? I'm guessing he might be in that grout, because when we were pouring this, we had to do it at night. And I have never seen so many bugs. It was incredible. And so we don't know how many of them have been interred in that ground. Hopefully no one will ever start looking for them. Then we started to install the main runners. And you can see how thick they are. We actually went from a 5-inch to a 7-inch. And what was really neat about that is that I showed you when we pulled the pads out, right? Now we added 2 inches. We actually had to bore out of the top of the pad a 2-inch hole so that we could actually have that, the antenna would remain at the same level. And that was really neat to see that. Okay, and then really what takes all the, doesn't take any time at all, we just put it back together. Just like that, and we're done. And there it is. This is the way the old used to be removed. We would have to walk around the antenna, set this stuff up, and move the crane around, pick it up, move the crane around, pick it up, move the crane around, pick it up. And so you can see the Aircaster really saved a lot of time since we didn't have to move our lifting location. We just rolled it right around, back and forth. Awesome. All right, next slide. Cables. All the way from the apex, which is at the very top there, you can sort of see it there through the dish, all the way down to the dish level, under the dish. So here they are, they're hanging out way over here, out in the middle of nowhere. That's a neat place to be, especially when you have the proper fall protection and everything else. One of those cables was actually about 400 foot long, so we had to actually run it all the way from the top there, like I said, underneath, down, all the way through this structure, and into the main control room on top of the antenna. Paired a lot of cables, saved a lot of money doing that. Great job. And I'll tell you what, the guys that work on this are awesome. We talk about getting all the engineers out, talking about teaching the kids about the math, the science. We also, especially out here at Goldstone, we need the guys that know how to do all this other stuff. We need the guys that know how to do the machining. We need to know the guys how to pull the hydraulics apart. We need these kind of guys out here. Because I can't do it. Okay, next slide. Oh! And so whenever we had some heavy equipment issues, we always went up for the reserves. And we used the reserves, and they just helped us right along. And occasionally we would also use these for transportation. No, not really. So, and in that light, I am a touch early. I have a little bit of time for a few questions, and then we'll start the video. And no questions is fine too. Oh.
Yeah. Now each yoke, there's 4 yokes per elevation bearing. Is that correct?
There's actually 2 yokes, one on the right side and one on the left side.
Okay, so every time you jack up a yoke, you have to jack them all up at the same time, or can you just jack up one and then replace the bearing and then move to the next one?
Right. What we would do is we would jack up the one yoke, we would replace that bearing, and then you have to put everything together, so you have to jack it back down, and then you would go to the other side, jack it back up, remove that one, put it back down, put it back down. So we did four lifts, but you only have 2 lifting points, one on each side of the tipping structure.
Thanks for your time.
Yep. Thank you.
What's the total weight that you're lifting?
Approximately 7 million pounds. Nothing. Well, it's lighter on the top part. When we lifted the whole antenna, the rotating structure was about 7 million pounds. Yeah. Actually had good weight.
What kind of crane supports that weight?
What kind of crane? Well, we didn't use a crane. We had to use the big jacks. We had to use 8 jacks per corner, as we called it, because there's 3 pads. We had to use 8 200-ton jacks, effectively per corner, so we could actually jack the antenna. Yeah, it had to be support on the runner. The interesting thing about it is that sometimes when you talk about jacking something up, you're saying, well, we're going to jack it up this high so we can pull this stuff out. We actually only jacked it up about 200 thou, which is about approximately 1/4 of an inch, so that we could actually pull those out. After that, then you didn't have to do any more.
But you used a crane for the runner, I think that
Well, yeah, oh yeah, the crane, the runners were pulled out with a crane, and so after we cleared the areas, the runner segments, like you saw out there, were actually pulled out by the crane or put in by the crane.
So it was only supporting the runner?
It was only doing the runner work, right. Yeah, the rest of the time I was up there, they're like this. Oh, all right, come on. Okay, maybe not. This is the one time and only time that we'll be replacing it. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
So, was there, during this time, was the antenna just totally inoperable? Was it able to be used for something, or did we have to use other resources, other antennas
Yeah,
to complete?
It was down for the whole time period. There's nothing we could do. The only way you could actually get something out of it, and that is if we had the electronics and stuff up, is if something would have gone directly overhead. And that would have been for a very short window. So the antenna was down, and all those supports had to be pushed off to the network. And so it was another, and the DSN does a terrific job as far as taking all these downtimes and then scheduling the spacecraft to other assets, which is great. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap up, and after Michael does his little spiel here, we're going to show the movie, and really enjoy it. It's a real neat one if you haven't seen it, and that was World's Toughest Fixes. So Sean Riley.